The power to shape the city's future depends very much on control of the land. As the cost of land gets higher and the competition for control gets more intense, there's all the more reason to explore the potential advantages of a community land trust. That's the main reason for the launch of a community land trust network here in Boston. To tell us about the initiative are two guests, a lecturer and director of community practice in the Department of Urban and Environmental Policy and Planning at Tufts University, Penn, and the coordinator for the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network based at the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, Eliza. Thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
I'll start with Penn in its fundamentals. What is a land trust?
So a community land trust is a way of owning land that I would call maybe halfway between public ownership and private ownership. And the way it works is a community-based nonprofit will own land and decide what gets built on it and lease the land to homeowners, businesses, or perhaps even urban farmers. And in that way, they can steward the land long-term for public benefit and keep that land out of the speculative market. So in a way, it's a very remarkable tool to work against the gentrification and the hyper hot real estate market that we have here in Boston right now.
Eliza Bertrand at DSNI, they did land trusting on a large scale, almost in bulk, as it were, so that you could really shape the character of the neighborhood almost. But talk about the uses of this that we're already living with, we have around us right now.
Yeah, at Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, our community land trust, Dudley Neighbors Inc., has a playground, urban farms, orchard, small businesses. We're actually in the process of developing this spring our first big commercial building for small businesses to provide affordable rental space, which is a huge challenge right now with rising costs for small businesses as well. We have rental housing and home ownership, and some of the new land trust projects are looking at a whole diversity of things in Chinatown around preserving cultural history and housing. The Urban Farming Institute is starting a land trust to preserve urban farming and train farmers to make a good living off of farming in the city. So it's a really flexible model. The most important thing is that it's used for what the residents in the neighborhood think the best use of the land is, and they have control over that.
Penn, if this has been around for a while, why do we need to have a network? What are you trying to do with it that hasn't been done already?
Well, I find the network remarkable because one of the best kept secrets here in Boston is the fact that in the Dudley neighborhood we do have one of the premier community land trusts in a city that everyone outside of Boston seems to know about, and people from all over have toured the Dudley's Community Land Trust to learn more about how they can do it back in their locales. But recently, we have now seen that lots of other neighborhoods in Boston are also interested, and there's really no reason why the model can't be used in other parts of Boston. Even though Dudley Neighbors Inc. was formed back in the late 80s, and of course, the real estate situation back then was a lot different. The fact is that you can still apply it usefully now, and this is what folks in the network are trying to figure out.
Eliza, who can use this? Because, I mean, a lot of people say, well, DSNI, that's a sort of a large group, they've been around, they know all kinds of things, but let's say you've got a neighborhood where there's some problem piece of property, you have an idea for changing it in some way that benefits everybody, and you say, well, where do we go from here?
Yeah, that's a good question. The best examples of community land trusts are when there's a broader vision for land in the neighborhood and not just parcel by parcel. The groups who are part of the network have already existed and are organizing and advocating for policies that will provide more permanently affordable housing in Boston and prevent displacement. So they really already have formed visions with their membership. And so they can take that and apply that to the neighborhood that they're in, whether that's Mattapan, Dorchester, Chinatown. And so it's usually a holistic vision that includes everything from like DNI's model, from open space to housing to small business space, rather than just lot by lot.
And ultimately, a trust has to deal, I imagine, with a public entity like the city, because back in the 70s and 80s there were a lot of vacant properties. The city was happy to unload them and later have them generating property tax revenue. But nowadays you don't need that. I mean, they say, well, how do you get the city to play along with this?
Well, the city already is playing along. One, they do have the experience of working with the Dudley Community Land Trust. But also, the mayor's housing plan itself really notes that community land trusts are a tool for fighting gentrification and stabilizing neighborhoods. Now, the city, of course, cares about property taxes, but it also cares about whether current residents can actually afford to stay. And we are running the risk in Boston where more and more middle, lower, and moderate income people are not finding the security of being able to stay in Boston. So the city is concerned about affordable housing for everyone, and land trusts are one of the ways that they can do that. There are a couple examples across the country where cities and land trusts have really worked together well. Probably the best known is the land trust that started in Burlington, Vermont under Bernie Sanders' tenure as mayor. It's one of the largest land trusts now with about 4,000 units of housing. And there are now cities in Chicago and Irvine, California that have also started citywide land trusts for the very purpose of promoting affordable housing.
Eliza, it's going to be more difficult nowadays to find land that's available, let alone cheap and available. So how do you take a step toward maximizing that?
Well, it's a combination of existing housing and preserving that housing. The COHIF Community Land Trust is a partnership with City Life, Vida Urbana, to buy homes where former foreclosed owners are living and put those homes on a land trust, preserve them as permanently affordable housing. But you're right, and generally these emerging land trusts are not going to be successful without support from the city and prioritizing city-owned parcels that are vacant for community land trusts and for permanently affordable housing.
And I imagine even with a trust like that, if you have a house that's gone down the pipeline toward foreclosure, you got to bid against some competitors if you're going to get control of that property.
You do, but because most of these groups are coming out of an organizing background, one of their recent acquisitions to their land trust was actually donated by the bank due to many years of organizing and pressure for the banks to donate the foreclosed homes to community land trusts and nonprofits that can preserve them.
Penn, what about what's going to be coming up? Well, you have a launch that's scheduled fairly soon, and what kind of things are you going to be doing to help people in Boston who are interested in this?
I'll let Eliza speak to the network since she coordinates that and will be organizing the launch. But for our part, I've had a team of graduate students that have been working in partnership with the network. We're going to be releasing a new report with a number of recommendations for the City of Boston on how we can increase the partnership between the city and the emerging community land trusts. And so that's one of the things that we'll be contributing.
And Eliza, I imagine this is something you're doing, not just to work with some of these established groups like community development corporations. I guess you envision at least eventually some other kinds of partners.
Yeah, anyone could be a group of residents that wants to come together and preserve land in their neighborhood and has a vision for how to do that. We really hope people will come to the launch to learn about how community land trusts work and how you could apply it to your neighborhood.
And for the time being, if they want to find out some more information, is there a way they can get in touch with you, maybe at DSNI?
Definitely. Yeah, we encourage people to contact me at DSNI for more information, and the launch is April 27th at 6 o'clock at Great Hall in Codman Square.
Thank you both very much for being with us. Eliza Parad and Penn Lowe. We'll have more news in just a moment.